There's a few very important aspects to a console's launch. We all know that launching a great spec machine with great hardware is important. We also know that having the right price to launch a generation is probably the most important aspect to a console. But there's one aspect to a console that I think a lot of people put merit on, and that's the fact that you need great launch titles to entice people to the console you're trying to sell, which is something both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X are lacking this time around, because we have to remember that a lot of people make decisions on consoles mainly by the price of the console or by the power that they see it. After that, they decide on the exclusive launch titles that will be on the console. Because let's face facts here for a second. At the beginning of this generation, for the Xbox One and the PS4, the strong launch lineup of Titanfall, Dead Rising 3, and of course one of my favorite games, Rise Son of Rome, wasn't enough for Xbox to overtake the PS4. Even with a much better launch lineup over the PS4, Xbox couldn't keep up with the sales numbers the PS4 was just putting out. That was due to the price more than anything, because the PS4 was $100 less than the Xbox One at launch. And as people figured out that the PS4 was more powerful than the Xbox One, the decision of buying the PS4 was extremely easy for a lot of gamers. So no matter what anyone says, the launch lineup of a console, while important, isn't the deciding factor people use to buy a console at the beginning, because most people will be playing third-party multi-platform games that every console has. Which brings me to the topic of this video, where Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox, had a lot to say about the launch titles coming to the Xbox Series X. He talks about how the launch lineup isn't the most important aspect of the console, and that sustained output of games over time is even more important, including having games for 2021's holiday season. It's a very telling interview that I found fascinating, because it does paint a pretty different picture to the launch of the consoles. Because not only are both consoles launching, but both Sony and Xbox are truly competing right now. They're going head to head to launch the generation on the right foot. But what I find more important is the long-term success and support of these consoles as the generation goes on, which is something Phil Spencer talks about in this interview. So let's get into this article and interview to discuss the important aspects of the Xbox Series X and what new games might be coming out next year. But first, like always, if you like the video, hit that subscribe button and that like button. The support is greatly appreciated. Alright, enough of that. Let's talk about these launch lineups and see exactly what Phil Spencer is talking about, because I'll be completely honest here, Sony's PlayStation 5 has the better launch lineup compared to Xbox's. There's no damage control here, it's just a fact. Xbox was supposed to launch with Halo Infinite, and because of that delay, we obviously won't be getting anything until next year from that game. But Sony has Spider-Man Miles Morales, which is going to be a huge game that a lot of people want to play. You throw in Demon's Souls and you can see they have two pretty prominent games ready to go for the PS5. Is it the best launch lineup ever? No, of course not. And honestly, both consoles are pretty much lacking in this department. But again, Sony does actually have some exclusive launch titles for their console launch, which is something this article points out. There's not much debate on the fact that a compromise of the launch lineups between Sony's PlayStation 5 and Microsoft's Xbox Series X has a clear winner in the former. Microsoft doesn't really have any big next-gen game that is only available on its console to start with. Games like Halo Infinite and even the third-party exclusive likely timed, The Medium, were delayed into 2021. Now, what this article points out is true. The launch lineup is readily on Sony's side. That's easy to see, especially when you look at even third-party exclusive deals with Xbox being delayed due to the situation going on around the world. And while that excuse might get some people angry, it's still something we all have to deal with. And it's something we'll continue to deal with as time goes on. But this is something Phil Spencer saw and understands, which the article points out here. However, in an interview published on Shock News, Microsoft's head of gaming, Phil Spencer, pointed out how the launch lineups won't really impact console sales anyway due to the extremely low next-gen console supplies available this year, partly due to the situation going on around the world. On the other hand, he argues holiday 2021 will be much more important as supply issues will be gone and game lineups will actually matter at that point. Okay, so first of all, I have to truly agree with Phil Spencer at this point, because no matter who you are, we're already probably upgrading to the new consoles right at the start of the generation. Sure, the casual person might wait, and they have every right to, but for us hardcore gamers who love to play games right when they come out, or get hardware right when they come out, we'll be there day and date ready to play all of these games at the best possible fidelity. That's the whole point of getting new hardware, especially if you're a hardcore gamer. Yet I have to admit that Phil Spencer is right in the fact that the launch lineup won't affect the sales of the consoles during the launch, because their systems will sell either way, because the hardcore will snatch up every single unit, and not just the Xbox Series X consoles, but the PS5 consoles will be snatched up instantly. I mean, I know plenty of people that can't get their hands on the next generation consoles because they're selling out. Heck, I'm one of those people. My pre-order was delayed because of high demand, and I never got a PS5 pre-ordered because it was crazily back-ordered and sites just kept crashing. So when Phil Spencer says the launch of these consoles doesn't need strong lineups, it's kind of a great point. Because let's be real, they'll sell out, and the only challenging part is going to be getting consoles out there for these retailers to sell, which is something Phil Spencer says here. I know there will be press that will want to write Xbox launch lineup versus PS5 launch lineup, but if they're both sold out completely, I'm not sure the launch lineup had much impact on anything other than maybe some review score. It's not going to dictate how many consoles we sell. The number one thing that's going to dictate how many consoles we sell is not the competition, it's not a Halo or a launch lineup, it's going to be how many units we can build. The statement might get some people angry because he does say that the launch lineups don't really help sell systems. It's more about actually making enough systems to get out to people. That to me is the huge factor I didn't really think about because it's a true statement. The only problem I'm seeing with both Sony and Microsoft is the fact they can't make enough systems because of the situation the world's dealing with. So while that might upset a lot of people because we all want great launch lineups, it's a statement we can't disagree with, because the games will matter later as the generation goes on, way more than at launch. For me, where things will start to matter is spring and summer of next year, because that's when people will look to buy more consoles, and going into the holiday season, which is something that Phil Spencer mentions here. We see that. Our pre-orders sold within hours, and that's true of the competition as well. There is a high demand for gaming consoles right now. We're both going to build as many as we can. So I think the possibility of Halo Infinite launching beside Xbox was more of a brand and heartfelt moment for us than it was critical to the launch. In fact, you could argue that holiday 2021 from a lineup is probably more important because from a competitive standpoint, both consoles, knock on wood, will have supply, so there will be a demand constraint rather than a supply constraint in the next year. This to me is the most important aspect of the interview because he does talk about the Xbox needing a strong lineup for next year. Because let's face it, most consoles will be coming into the market and they'll have plenty of supply, so anyone that wants to buy a console will have them ready to go. Instead of walking into a store asking for a console and being turned around because they're sold out, next year you'll walk into a retail store and most likely they'll have any of the one next generation consoles you want. So it's a no-brainer to have a strong lineup of first-party games going into next generation. And to be honest, Sony's lineup next year is strong with God of War and Horizon 2. But if you look at Xbox's lineup, they have Halo Infinite and of course some surprises which could come from Bethesda and their Xbox Game Studios first-party studios. So yeah, I think this is about long-term plans and a strategy that Xbox knew was going to happen in 2021, which is something the article points out here. This pretty much confirms Microsoft is confident in its long-term strategy right now. There's not a lot of reasons to buy an Xbox Series X, as mentioned by Arkai in his review of the console. However, going forward, they are clearly counting on a much meatier lineup powered by first-party acquisitions like Bethesda's. For instance, it's believed that Bethesda Game Studios' new IP in a very long time, Starfield, could be scheduled to launch in holiday 2021. And there you have it, everyone. Now, I know that not having a great launch lineup could hinder a console's performance when they launch, but to be frank, that hasn't happened for a while now, especially when you look at history in the PS4, and where they had a pretty weak lineup of games, at least that's my opinion, they still killed it in sales, and they also killed it in sales as the generation went on because they brought out amazing first-party exclusive games. And that's the strategy I think Xbox is trying to put out here. I think they want to launch the console at a great price and make sure the hardware is top-notch. So when third-party games do come out, they look and play better on the Xbox Series X. And as consoles become readily available, they'll have great first-party games to complement the high demand of customers. That to me is the strategy I think Phil Spencer is talking about, and they'll start to show some of the amazing exclusives they have once they get into the holiday season of 2021 and probably next summer. As for now, I think they'll rely on third-party exclusive deals and maybe Halo Infinite to launch in the springtime. Either way, I think next year is going to be very competitive for both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X consoles. Let's hope we start to get some amazing first-party games from both Sony and Microsoft. But enough of what I think about all this, tell me what you think about all of this. Do you agree with Phil Spencer? Does the launch lineup not affect the console sales? Do you think the PS5 has a stronger launch lineup? Will 2021 and beyond be the more important aspects of the console's generation? What future games does Xbox have to compete with the PS5? Do you buy consoles based on their launch lineups or the promise of the future? Or is power and price more important to you? Go down below and let me know. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please hit that subscribe button and that like button. The support helps out the channel more than you know. And give me a follow on Twitter at Zalker87. I'm always on there talking games and sharing my latest videos. Plus, I love interacting with everyone there, so get on Twitter and let's talk about gaming. Also, follow me on Xbox Live. My gamertag is Zalker87, just like my channel name. See what games I'm playing, and let's compete in achievements for the month. Right now, I'm still playing Watch Dogs Legions. I'm having a lot of fun with that. I just took out one of the main bosses, which was this big AI boss, which was kind of cool. Had a really good storyline and kind of trippy, honestly, because you're in like dimensions, and I have a lot of fun with that game, honestly. I know it's getting a little bit of a bad rap, but Ubisoft just makes great open world games, and I'm enjoying this. So I recommend everybody to check it out. But for now, let me know what you're playing. Go down below. Are you playing with your Xbox Series X or your PS5? I'd love to know. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching. And until next time, remember, enjoy your gaming. Later.